Amelia Parker had always believed she understood what stability looked like. For 8 years, she and her husband, Daniel, had lived what most would call an ordinary, but comfortable life in their quiet Sydney suburb. Their days followed a predictable rhythm: early mornings with burnt toast or rushed coffee, evenings spent in front of the telly, and the occasional weekend barbecue when Daniel wasn't buried under work. To outsiders, it seemed peaceful. To Amelia, it had slowly become a life built more on routine than connection. Daniel, a paramedic with a reputation for being reliable and level-headed, had grown gradually distant over the years, though neither of them ever said it out loud. His shifts were long, draining, and often emotionally heavy. By the time he walked through the front door, his mind was still caught somewhere between the emergencies he'd handled and the exhaustion weighing down his bones. He'd collapse on the couch, scroll through his phone without noticing her, and mumble something that sounded like "big day" before drifting off. Amelia never blamed him. She understood his job demanded a lot. But understanding didn't soften the growing ache of loneliness. Her days as a nurse weren't easy either, but she found small comfort in caring for others. What she couldn't admit, even to herself, was how badly she wished someone would care for her with the same attentiveness she poured into the world. She longed for conversation that didn't feel like crossing a desert. She longed for warmth, not dramatic romance, not fireworks, just presence. That presence arrived unexpectedly the day Daniel announced that his old high school mate, Josh, had moved back to Sydney after a business venture up north collapsed. "He's doing it tough," Daniel said, reaching into the fridge for a drink. "Thought it'd be nice to have him over for dinner sometimes. You know, help him get back on his feet." Amelia had no reason to object. She'd seen photos of Josh before, always grinning, always surrounded by people, the type who lit up a room just by walking into it. When she finally met him in person, she realized the photos hadn't lied. He had a relaxed Aussie charm that felt instantly approachable. He joked easily, teased Daniel like no time had passed, and asked Amelia questions with an attentiveness that caught her slightly off guard. Josh wasn't polished like Daniel, nor as calm, but he had a warmth that wrapped around people effortlessly. He noticed things, small things Daniel no longer registered. He commented on her cooking with genuine appreciation, asked about her day with more interest than formality, and he laughed in a way that made the house feel a little less empty. Over time, his visits became more frequent. Sometimes Daniel invited him. Sometimes Josh simply dropped by to return something he'd borrowed or to chat over a cup of tea. Amelia told herself it was harmless. After all, he was Daniel's mate. Nothing could possibly be inappropriate about that, but small things began shifting, so quietly she almost missed them. Whenever she talked, Josh listened fully, leaning forward, eyes focused, nodding in understanding. When she laughed, he noticed. When she seemed tired, he asked why. And when she felt overwhelmed from work, he offered reassuring words that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt for years. Meanwhile, Daniel's distance grew, though without malice. He was simply tired. They were both tired. Their marriage felt like two people living parallel lives under the same roof, never quite reaching across the emotional gap. Then came the night everything shifted. A heavy storm rolled across Sydney, the kind that rattled windows and soaked the streets in minutes. Daniel was called into a last-minute double shift, grabbing his jacket and apologizing on the way out. "Don't wait up," he said, already halfway out the door. Amelia nodded, used to it by now. An hour later, a frantic knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Josh, dripping wet from the downpour, holding the power drill he'd borrowed earlier that week. "Sorry, thought I'd drop it off," he said with a sheepish grin. "Didn't expect the sky to absolutely chuck it down." She ushered him in, insisting he stay until the rain settled. He accepted, shivering, brushing water from his hair. They talked for hours, about old friendships, failed plans, unexpected disappointments, and the strange ways life sometimes reroutes people. Their conversation drifted from funny stories to vulnerable memories, and the house felt warmer, fuller, easier. At one point, Josh grew quiet. He looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen before, gentle, curious, uncertain. Amelia felt her heartbeat quicken, not from romance, but from the sudden awareness of how close they sat, how alive the air felt between them. Nothing happened. Not a touch. Not a step. But something shifted, undeniably. A line, not crossed but acknowledged, Josh eventually left once the rain eased. Amelia locked the door behind him and pressed her back against it, struggling to steady her breath. She knew that moment meant something, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't, yet lingered. 4 days afterward, she avoided both men. She kept busy at work, came home late, cooked in silence, retreated early. But the tension remained, a quiet tremor beneath the surface of their lives, and deep down, she knew the first crack had formed. In the weeks that followed that stormy night, the atmosphere around Amelia grew thick with unspoken tension. She felt it in the way she moved, in the rhythm of her breath, in the awkwardness that filled any space Josh happened to step into. The moment they'd shared, silent yet undeniably charged, lingered in her mind far more often than she cared to admit. It had become a quiet intruder, a shadow hanging behind her thoughts, whispering what she didn't dare speak aloud. Josh seemed affected too. Whenever they crossed paths, his eyes flashed with a mixture of apology and curiosity, as though he wasn't sure whether to step back or step closer. Amelia tried her best to act normal, but it was near impossible. Every smile felt forced. Every conversation felt loaded. And every silence felt louder than words. Meanwhile, Daniel remained oblivious. He was still drowning in long shifts, emergency calls, and late-night exhaustion. He noticed Amelia was quieter, but he chalked it up to her job being stressful. He never suspected anything deeper was at play. If anything, he seemed relieved not to deal with emotional conversations he didn't have the stamina for. But tension doesn't dissolve simply because no one mentions it. It grows. It expands. And soon, something had to give. The breaking point arrived one Friday evening. Daniel had been scheduled for a weekend paramedic training camp organized by their department. He'd packed his bags, kissed Amelia lightly on the cheek, and promised he'd be back Sunday evening. It was the kind of half-hearted reassurance she'd heard 100 times. She wished it meant more. She wished she felt something when he said it. Shortly after he left, Josh messaged, saying he could swing by to help fix the leaky pipe under the kitchen sink. He'd promised Daniel days earlier he'd get it done, and Amelia, hesitant but unable to produce a valid objection, agreed. When Josh arrived, the air shifted immediately. He walked inside with his usual friendly smile, but beneath it, something nervous trembled. Amelia felt it too, even the space between them felt different. Thicker. More fragile. Josh knelt under the sink, fiddling with pipes and muttering to himself. Amelia tried to busy herself arranging dishes, wiping the bench, anything to avoid looking at him too long. But the silence was suffocating. Eventually, Josh spoke. About the other night, his voice cracked slightly. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Amelia froze, fingers trembling around the dish towel. She said nothing. He continued quietly. I know it shouldn't have happened, not even that moment. And I'm not trying to make things complicated. But, Amelia, being around you, talking to you, it's become something I look forward to more than I should. Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the words alone, it was the honesty behind them. The kind of honesty she used to share with Daniel before life pulled them apart. I shouldn't feel this way, Josh added, voice low. He's my mate. And you're his wife. Amelia leaned against the counter, heart racing painfully. We didn't do anything wrong, she whispered, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Josh crawled out from under the sink and stood. They were only a few steps apart now. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. No, he said gently, but we're both thinking things we shouldn't. Their eyes met, and the truth hit them with uncomfortable clarity. They were standing on a fault line, one tremor away from disaster. I don't want to ruin anything, Josh murmured. But I care about you, Amelia. Maybe more than I should. Her throat tightened. Hearing it aloud was worse, and somehow better, than imagining it. Loneliness is a powerful force. So is feeling seen after years of being emotionally invisible. Before she could stop herself, Amelia whispered, I care too. And that was all it took. Josh stepped toward her, slow and hesitant, giving her every chance to step away. She didn't. Her hands shook, her chest hammered, but she didn't move. When he kissed her, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was soft, fragile, and terrifying, because it felt like something she had been starving for. The moment lasted only seconds, but its consequences would stretch far beyond that. As soon as the kiss broke, guilt roared through her. She stumbled back, covering her mouth, eyes wide with horror. This can't happen, she whispered, shaking her head. This can't ever happen again. Josh looked shattered but nodded. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, she said, breath trembling. I'm the one who's married. I should have stopped it. They stood there, both shaken, both drowning in regret and longing, both knowing they had stepped past a line that could never be erased. Josh left moments later, unable to stay. Amelia collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had no idea how to tell Daniel. She had no idea how to fix any of it. She only knew one thing. The secret she now carried would tear their quiet world apart sooner or later. And she was right, because Daniel, without meaning to, was about to discover the truth in the most unexpected way imaginable. Daniel discovered the truth on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, one that should have passed without significance, one that should have blended quietly into the week. But life has a way of choosing the most mundane moments to deliver the most devastating blows. He'd been helping Josh reorganize tools in his garage, a simple favor mates did for each other. At some point, needing to send an urgent email, Daniel picked up Josh's old tablet from the workbench, the one Josh kept around for invoices and receipts. He didn't expect it to be unlocked. He didn't expect anything unusual. But instead of a browser window, the screen lit up on a set of unsent messages. All addressed to Amelia. His breath caught. His hands froze. Something cold slid down his spine. He read the first line of the first message. I know we shouldn't feel this way. He didn't need to read further. His world cracked in half right there in the silence of the garage. By the time Josh returned from fetching a box, Daniel could barely steady the fury trembling through him. He didn't shout. He didn't punch anything. He simply stared at Josh with a look that made Josh stop mid-sentence, face draining of color. What's this? Daniel asked quietly, holding up the tablet. Josh didn't have to look. His shoulders slumped. His breath stuttered. Dan, mate. I can explain. But Daniel didn't want explanations. Not there. Not with tools around. Not with the weight of betrayal pressing so hard he felt like he couldn't breathe. He left without another word. When Amelia heard the front door slam that evening, she knew something terrible had happened. Daniel never slammed doors. He walked into the living room, tablet still in hand, eyes red and burning with disbelief. Tell me, he said, voice trembling, that I'm wrong. Tell me he didn't mean what he wrote. Amelia's heart shattered. There was no use pretending. No use lying, she whispered, I'm sorry. Daniel staggered back slightly, as if the word had hit him physically. So it's true. Tears welled in her eyes. There was a moment. I didn't plan it. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. I swear to you nothing more happened, Daniel. It was one mistake, one horrible mistake. His jaw tightened. A moment. A mistake. With my best mate. He paced the room, hands on his head, fighting to make sense of a reality he never imagined. Amelia cried quietly, trying to speak, but he wasn't ready to hear anything. Every movement she made seemed to cut him deeper. After what felt like hours, Daniel grabbed a small bag, tossed in a few clothes, and left the house. He didn't say whether he'd be back. He didn't say when. He just walked out, leaving Amelia alone in the quiet, suffocating aftermath. The next few days blurred together. Amelia barely slept. She called Daniel several times, each going unanswered. She sent messages, long ones, short ones, apologies, explanations, but all were left unread. The silence was punishment enough to tear her heart in two. Daniel, meanwhile, stayed with his sister in Parramatta. He didn't speak much, didn't eat much, and barely functioning at work. His colleagues noticed. His sister noticed. Everyone could see the emotional collapse he was trying desperately to hide. One night, he finally attended a counseling session through his workplace, encouraged by his supervisor, who'd seen too many paramedics break under pressure. The counselor didn't ask about work. She asked about Amelia. And for the first time, Daniel spoke, haltingly, painfully, with raw heartbreak seeping through every word. Josh, on the other hand, spiraled in his own quiet corner of Sydney. He didn't leave his flat for days. The shame ate at him. He replayed the moment with Amelia again and again, not with longing, but with regret so heavy it made his chest ache. He considered calling Daniel, begging for forgiveness, but he knew it wasn't his place. Not anymore. He'd broken something sacred. Amelia, realizing she couldn't fall apart forever, booked a therapy appointment of her own. She needed to understand why she'd let loneliness push her so far. Therapy didn't erase her guilt, but it helped her begin confronting truths she'd avoided for years, about communication, emotional neglect, and the dangers of letting silence grow in a marriage. 2 weeks after Daniel left, he finally agreed to meet her. They chose a small cafe in Newtown, neutral ground. Amelia arrived first, hands trembling around her cup. When Daniel walked in, he looked tired, older somehow, as if he'd aged years in a fortnight. They sat across from each other in a silence that hurt. Finally, Daniel asked, "Why him? Why anyone?" Amelia swallowed hard. "I was lonely, Daniel. I felt invisible. I tried to reach for you, but you were so tired, so far away. I didn't go looking for anything, I swear. It just happened. And I hate myself for it." Daniel looked down, wiping at his eyes quickly. "I know I've been distant. I know I haven't been the partner I should have been. But Amelia, you were supposed to come to me. Not him." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. Truly." They talked for almost 2 hours. Some moments were calm. Others were raw. But for the first time in years, they were honest. When they stepped outside, they both understood something clearly. They were at a crossroads. They could try to rebuild, with counseling, patience, and painful honesty. Or they could walk separate paths, carrying the lessons with them. Before any decision was made, Amelia sent Josh one final message, asking to meet. They met at a park bench at sunset, both knowing this conversation needed to happen. "I'm ending all of this," Amelia said firmly. "Whatever happened, whatever feelings there were, it's done." Josh nodded, eyes heavy with remorse. "I'm leaving Sydney for a while. You deserve space to fix things. And Daniel deserves better than what I gave him." She thanked him for the honesty, then stood and walked away, not looking back, and for the first time in weeks, Amelia felt something she hadn't felt since everything fell apart, a faint, fragile sense of clarity.